Hello everyone, this is the finale of What If Naruto Found His Soulmate, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto felt the remnants of her life fading away. Her already nearly closed eyes started faltering, her eyelids falling slowly. His heart skipped another beat. No. This wasn't happening, this wasn't real. It was a nightmare, yes, that was it. He couldn't accept it, but the pain was real, unbearable. No. Let the gods take his life too. If it was like this, then they could at least save him the pain. Hinata felt herself slowly falling into the darkness. Her eyelids covered her sight. The last thing she saw was him. The last thing she saw were his cerulean eyes, filled with pain and sorrow. The last thing she thought was his name. Naruto-kun. I'm sorry, she thought to herself, as the eternal darkness started enveloping her whole being. She fought hard to keep herself from falling into it, but to no avail. It called for her, it drew her into it. But as she was ready to be completely consumed, a flash of powerful red light covered the darkness. Kyuubi knew he didn't have much time. This would be his final act, the finale. He had gathered all his life force, the very essence that kept a soul alive. He had to use it, to save her. He knew Naruto couldn't live for long if she was gone. He was a demon lord, he managed to survive the mental pain. But Naruto, with the life he had till recently, with the way people treated him, he knew he wouldn't last a week without her. He had to save him, to save her. It would be at least the first right thing he had done, at least the last thing he could do, to attempt achievement of retribution. He had to save him from going through what he had to save her, for she was the only light that could guide him in the darkness. He drew all of his power into the remnants of her soul, and unleashed it. The massive light was strong, so strong that she felt as if she was burning. But not in a harmful way. She felt as power started to flow through her once more. She felt the darkness fading away, as the red light guided her path. Naruto stared stunned at the limp girl in his arms. Was she gone? Was it over? No. 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 This thought lingered in his mind for what seemed an eternity. Tears welled up once more, this time he couldn't hold a single one back. He sobbed lightly, then a little harder, but then, her pale skin seemed to lit up for a second. Her body seemed to vibrate a pale red light, his heart was filled with hope once again. He could feel it, he could feel her soul reconstructing, he could feel it. But as her own soul was restored, he felt another one being consumed. What was that? What was happening? He then heard a weak voice in the back of his mind. For once, I did the right thing, for once. I saved someone, take care of her kid, for I won't be here. To do it, he heard Kyuubi whispering, his voice weak, extremely weak. His heart ached. What did he mean? What had he done? He asked, but no answer came. He shouted, but silence was the response. He now knew that feeling. Kyuubi had exchanged his own soul. In her place, he had his life force to bring her back, in the cost of his own life. He knew the demon was now completely gone, not like last time, for last time he could feel a part of his soul still there. But now, there was nothing. Kyuubi no Kitsune had given his life to save her. A tear fell down his whiskered cheek. The demon was gone. The only one he recently came to even think of as a father was gone. Hinata heard the demon's weak voice herself. She knew he was gone, and she found herself wanting to cry. The red light had faded and she was left alone in the dark. Was she alive? Was she? She didn't dare to open her eyes, she didn't dare to open them and see nothing but darkness. But it wouldn't hurt that much, right? She slowly raised her eyelids, her vision blurry at the moment. Her sight steadily cleared, she could now make out the weak light of the sun falling between the dark clouds on the sky. She could feel something warm wrapped around her. She knew this warmth. She could now make out a figure, bare inches away from her. It was Naruto. He stared at her in disbelief. His heart was pounding like crazy. He felt hope rising to inhuman levels. His eyes went wide as her eyelids started to move slowly upwards, letting him see that lavender color he loved so much. She met his gaze, and her heart was lifted to the heaven. She once more saw that cerulean blue she adored so much. She thought she couldn't see it again, yet there it was, staring in her own lavender pools. Her muscles were less sore now, the stiffness and numbness were nearly gone. She saw tears welling up in his eyes, she didn't understand why, until he brought her in a deep, passionate kiss, tears falling down his cheeks from his closed eyes. She closed her own, returning the gesture. When they broke apart, he placed his forehead against hers while looking down. "Don't you ever do that again," he whispered, fear evident in his voice, yet happiness was also flooding it. She smiled weakly. "Or what?" she whispered. He raised his gaze to meet hers. "Or what?" Question mark quote. He whispered back. She still smiled. "What are you going to do if I do it again?" she asked softly. He grinned weakly and chuckled. "Have a heart attack," he answered and kissed her again. She returned it, and when they parted for air, they both smiled. She rested her head on his chest, still feeling sore and weak from the battle. He leaned back, letting her head fall in the crook of his N. She didn't move to place it on his chest though, like she did when they were at bed. He was a few inches taller, yet she liked to rest on his chest, but now, she just lied there, half on him, enjoying his warmth as if afraid it would suddenly fade away, as it nearly did a few minutes ago. They both smiled as tears of happiness silently fell down their eyes, mixed with the tears of sorrow for the loss of the demon lord they had come to see as a father. But the exhaustion of the fight soon forced them back in the emerald dream. Out ofn I love the emerald dream, line smiley face. Hiyashi gazed out from a window at the Hyuga mansion. The dark clouds that had so suddenly appeared now had started to fade away. Was it an omen? Was it a mark from Kami? Well, time would tell. He was worried about other things though. Hinata hadn't come home last night, and she was out all day long too. Well, was she? He feared the worst. Maybe the Capers had made it. Maybe they had taken her away and he was just standing there gazing at the now clearing sky. But what could he do? He had no solid proof about this, so he would wait, at least till noon that is. Tsunade took a sip from her tea as the clouds started to go away as quickly as they came. Why did she had a feeling that a certain blonde brat had something to do with this? Naruto stirred lightly, feeling sore from sleeping on the grass. It wasn't that uncomfortable, especially with such a nice sheet ne. He smiled at Hinata's still sleeping form. She was so peaceful. He knew that what happened today could very well happen again, and he wouldn't allow that. He knew that there was a very limited amount of people capable of challenging their power, and he thanked Kami that one of them was gone. But at what cost? Would it require such SS in the future? Would other people close to him have to S for him to prevent a greater disaster? Truth be told, Kyuubi had come to be a fatherly figure in his mind. He didn't really act as a father, but whenever needed, he guided Naruto and Hinata. He was always willing to help both of them. During their training sessions, he advised wisely and guided Hinata step by step. That way, she came to be extremely good in her new style only with around 3 days of training. Kyuubi at first was the bane of his life, but he came to be the closest thing to a father that he ever had. Yes, he was a fox team or furball, but at least he came to be good company whenever needed. Guiding, willing to help, not that he made it seem though. He could always refuse to help, yet he gave in each time, like a parent would to a persistent little kid, groaning and mumbling things to himself. Too bad this fox wasn't there now. He gazed at the sky. It was noon and the sun had started to falter behind the forested surroundings of Konoha. Had they slept that much? But who can blame them? He averted his gaze once more to the sleeping girl that lied nearly on him. He smiled and slowly sat up, careful not to wake her up. Setting her in his lap, she rested her head in the crook of his N once more, her hands in her own lap. He very slowly circled an arm under her knees and one behind her back, and with little effort, he lifted both of them and started slowly walking towards the village. He was still a little sore and numb, but she wasn't heavy. He couldn't help but smile to himself at her sleeping form. She was like a child, a beautiful one he may point, that wanted to lie in a parent's hug forever. She was breathing slowly and rhythmically, her lips curved up in a peaceful smile, the bangs of her hair beautifully framing her pale face. God, he wished he could stare at her forever. His own clothes were somehow shredded, so he had taken the jacket from her and put it on himself, leaving it unzipped, that is. She wore her kunoiki net shirt, leaving her in much lighter clothing. She had her own jacket wrapped around her waist though, and he was somehow amused that she was wearing two jackets in such a hot day. But who was he to judge? He didn't have to take her to the hospital. He was more aware than anyone of her physical condition. He could feel that she was all right. Her healing powers had left no scars or bruises on her body, while Kyubi had healed all the serious wounds, leaving minor ones for her powers to deal with. Hinata slowly opened her eyes, only to find herself in Naruto's arms. Her slight confusion as to how she ended up here quickly turned into a smile. They had done it, Fosse was defeated. Yet she felt somehow empty. It clicked then. Kyubi wasn't here. She felt herself like crying again, but she held it back. Yes, Kyubi was a somehow important person in her life. She had learned more from him in the few days they knew each other than the whole time she trained with the Hyugas. He was like her second father, though she would never really admit it. She knew the idea the villagers had for the demon, so telling such a thing would very easily lead to people hunting her around. Not good. She raised her head to look at Naruto's face. It was then that he noticed she was awake, and so he smiled widely. "You okay, Hina-chan?" were his first words. She only nodded, and hungry, she muttered to herself as she looked down. He grinned as he saw a restaurant a few buildings ahead. He gently let her feet touch the ground. Hinata-chan, what about dinner? There's a cool restaurant down there, he said, pointing towards the building, and she looked up to see where he was pointing. She smiled. "Hi," was her reply, and they slowly started walking towards it. The restaurant was rather fancy. The tables were distributed in equal distance around the room, while the kitchen door lied at the other side of the building's entrance. Naruto had zipped up his jacket while Hinata had worn her own one, not covering the seal now. They smiled at each other and went directly to the bathrooms, wanting to wash up from the battle before sitting to eat. They had no wounds, but their faces were somehow dirty from the encounter. The walls were painted a slight Titan color, making the restaurant look rather shadowy. There were plenty of random pictures hanging on the walls, as well as lighten up candles, making it look more romantic, in an intriguing way. A certain blonde kunoiki, though, specialized in the erotic area, had seen the couple walk down the streets and hid herself in the shadows of the opposite store. Seeing them enter the restaurant at the opposite side of the street, she followed slowly and stealthily, trying to not draw attention. Making it inside, she barely saw them entering the bathrooms, each at their gender's respective one. She smirked to herself as she made a hand seal. Whispering a word, she changed in a perfect copy of Hinata. At least nearly. The couple kept talking to each other as they washed up. They decided Kyubi deserved at least a small funeral for his S. Naruto was done pretty fast. Taking a glance at the mirror, he found himself presentable and slowly opened the male's bathroom door. Outside was Hinata. He grinned widely. "I thought you weren't done yet, Hinata-chan," he said, still grinning. She smiled back. "I was done sooner than I though, Naruto-kun," she answered, but Naruto thought something was different. It was Hinata the one he was looking at, but her eyes, they had something different, not the kindness and warmth Hinata usually radiated. Her smile seemed to be more seductive than gentle, something Hinata never did, and the tone and paint in her voice seemed oddly unfamiliar. Where was the Hinata he knew? He shook the thoughts away. Maybe Kyubi's death had shook him more than he thought. They both sat down at a table with two chairs. Hinata was still smiling while Naruto was grinning widely. "So, Hinata-chan, what would you like?" he asked, and she kept smiling. At that moment, a waiter came by their table. "Welcome to our respective restaurant. May I please have your orders?" he asked formally, and the teens nodded. They gave their orders and the waiter was gone in a second, taking an order from the next table. To Naruto's surprise, Hinata was quite silent, yet she kept smiling. This was strange, he couldn't hear her saying anything mentally either. Why? He tried to speak to her mentally, but he found the way blocked. What the hell was wrong? He opened his mouth, wanting to ask her why she was blocking him away, when his eyes caught something extremely unfamiliar. Hinata caught him staring at her maybe her chest. He didn't try to hide it, that's for sure. What is it, Naruto-kun? she asked, and Naruto twitched an eyebrow. Hinata hadn't stuttered in front of him for more than a while now. But what scared him most was that the seal wasn't there. Normally, at least the edge of the seal should be visible under her jacket. He remembered that she had purposely zipped her jacket a little more, wanting to allow people to get at least a slight idea of what it was, even if only the edge was visible. But now, he was quite sure that if he lowered the cloth, there would be nothing there. He sucked the words he was intending to let out and changed them in the last moment. "Can't I admire my girlfriend?" he asked, careful not to raise his voice. He was ready to raise an eyebrow when Hinata, instead of blushing and looking away shyly, seemed to twitch an eyebrow, if only for a split second. Then she smiled and giggled. What's wrong with her? He decided there was only one way to find out. He slowly leaned forward. The table was quite small, he realized, and he held his head lightly to the side. He closed his eyes and so did she. After a second, their lips touched. He immediately backed away, exactly at the moment their lips made the slightest contact. He felt like a jolt was going to hit him if he stayed there any longer. And if that wasn't enough, her lips seemed different, their taste, their touch, different. This was not Hinata. "En Naruto-kun?" she asked shyly. Sorry Hinata-chan, it's just that, well, there are plenty of people around," he tried to excuse, and she seemed to believe him, though she nearly raised an eyebrow. He looked down, trying to think of a way to take out the intruder. But where was the real Hinata? Hinata had just finished washing herself up. Pulling up the zipper of her jacket, she told Naruto mentally that she was coming out. But no response came. Her eyes widened a little. Why didn't he respond? She headed to the door and tried to open it. It didn't move. She tried again. It wouldn't open. She thought for a moment to bring it down with her juken, but then she heard Naruto from the outside of the door, greeting her. What the hell was going on? She yelled Naruto's name, but no answer came. She finally realized, someone had placed a silencing seal around the room, that's why she couldn't talk to him even mentally. The door was also locked, and she was intrigued to break it down. Then an idea flashed in her mind. If she could speak to him mentally, couldn't she see through him, mentally? "Naruto-kun, can you come with me? I need to tell you something," she said shyly once more, and he nodded. Though he was already at high alert. They both walked out of the building from the back door and found themselves in an alley. "So, what is it, Hinata-chan?" he asked, pretending to be curious. She sighed while having turned her back at him. "Naruto-kun, this won't work. My father won't allow this. I can't stand this. I'm not strong enough to face him, neither are you, so please Naruto-kun, goodbye," she said and started walking away, a slight smirk on her face. Naruto raised both eyebrows. Okay, now he was more than 100% sure that this could not possibly be Hinata. An hour ago, they were determined to face her father, not to mention they were both stronger than him with their powers. His eyes flashed a pure red then, and he grabbed Hinata from behind, seeing her on a wall while holding her by the shoulders. "One question, one answer. Hinata," he commanded rather than asked. Her eyes were full of fear, full of surprise and at the edge of tears at the sight of his demonic ones. "En Naruto-kun, what are you doing?" "I'm Hinata," she said, pretending to sob that he didn't believe her. He slapped her across the face and she looked at him wide-eyed. "Wrong answer," he said and punched her hard in the stomach. She couldn't hold it anymore, and the hinge dropped. Naruto stared at her wide-eyed. The girl coughed some blood on the ground while holding her mid-area. Her hair were now blonde and her eyes were blue. Her clothes were more fitting for a model rather for a kunoichi. He caught her from the end and raised her to eye level. "Yoshi," he stated, his eyes full of hate. She shivered as his gaze seemed to ell her mercilessly. "How dare you," he said in anger and disbelief. He was trying to hold back from King Her, for it wouldn't be good for his public image, right? That doesn't deserve you," she tried to say as his hands were nearly choking her. Okay, bad choice of words, and she knew it. He launched a punch across her face and sent her flying at a can. She hit it hard and tried hard to suppress a yell of pain. He slowly walked towards her. "Yes, you're right. She deserves the world, and I wish I could give it to her. But you don't deserve S," he said and raised her again. She tried to fight back, but his strength was unmatched. She was sure she was going to if not by him, then by someone else. Naruto-kun, stop. This voice. Hinata. He turned around to look at Hinata, who had entered the scene from the door they had used. Please, King Her won't help things, she said, trying to calm him down. She approached and placed her palm over his heart, and that seemed to immediately soothe him. Please, she whispered, and he sighed, releasing the blonde girl from his grip and letting her hit the ground. No. Please. If you won't, then she will. Yoshi said, looking at him, her eyes full of fear for death. Naruto glared while Hinata looked at her worriedly. Who will you? She asked softly. The girl had started to sob. She ordered me to seduce him, cause, she wanted you apart. She choked out between her sobs. Naruto's glare softened as his eyes turned to normal. He placed an arm on the girl's shoulder and started emitting red chakra. Yoshi could feel his hand on her shoulder. She shivered, afraid he would hit her again. Instead, his palm started emitting a pale red light, and she felt its warm sensation coursing through her. She felt the pain from his strikes fade away. She felt better with every passing second. What is this? She asked, still sobbing. She thought healing chakra was green. I was the container of Kyubi no Kitsune, the demon who attacked Konoha 17 years ago. He has given me his chakra, and I thought that since it can heal me, it can heal others too, he said. He extracted his chakra back whenever it was ready to enter her system. Without Kyubi here, he didn't know if this girl could survive if the chakra mixed with her own. She stared at him wide-eyed. So that was the reason her employer referred to him as creature, or monster. She now knew why all the villagers seemed to despise him. She hated herself for what she had done, adding more pain in his already screwed life. You were? She asked in disbelief, and he nodded. Kyubi, SD today? To save Hinata, he said, taking a glance at the girl behind him. She smiled sadly. Yoshi, in the meantime, could sense the pain radiating from the two. She knew Kyubi was something more than a demon for them. When he finished healing, she hugged him tightly. He was taken aback for a second. I'm sorry, she whispered as she sobbed on his shoulder. He relaxed and hugged her back. Hinata looked at them and her gaze was soft. This was another thing she loved him for. He could be so comforting when needed, and all he had to do was hug you. Yoshi-san, who made you do this? He finally asked when the girl lifted herself from his shoulder and sat back down. She was much calmer now. She didn't make me. She paid me with a great amount of money. I thought it would be just another seduction job. I'm one of the head Konoha spies because of my seduction abilities and techniques. I didn't really like the idea of breaking a couple, but I thought this was my job. This was what I was supposed to do. Somehow, you resisted all my techniques, even the kissing one, she said and looked down worriedly. Naruto looked up at Hinata from his crouching position near the girl and she smiled. She leaned forward. I saw everything, Naruto-kun. She had locked me in the bathroom with a sound seal, so I couldn't talk to you. I can see what you see, she whispered in his ear and he grinned widely. As she raised her head to stand straight again, he couldn't resist but to give her a peck on the lips before turning around to the other girl. He didn't notice her slight blush, of course. So, who is she, Yoshi? He asked and she looked up at him again. She bit her bottom lip, weighing her options. If I tell you, she will probably kill me, she said, and shivered. He put a hand on her shoulder. She won't live long enough to do it, he said blankly, his eyes full of determination. Yoshi didn't know why, but for some reason, she believed him. Very well, her name is. She bit her lip again as both Naruto and Hinata had averted the gaze on her. Hyuga. Chika, she said and looked down as Hinata gasped and Naruto stared wide-eyed. A Hyuga. What the hell? Who's that Chika? He asked while looking back at Hinata. She shook her head. She's the head elder of my clan, she said worriedly. Why would Chika do this? Naruto looked back down at the girl. Anything else you can tell us, Yoshi? He asked and she brought her hand on her chin as if in thought. Well, she mentioned something about her last employee had SD. She said his bragging and arrogance had brought it upon him. She didn't tell me the reason of my job, but I heard a whisper or two about some bloodline research, and something about given ultimate power, she said, looking back at them. She wasn't trained to be a spy for anything. Her ears were more than capable of catching even soft whispers. When she wanted, of course. Both teens looked at each other wide-eyed, having a conversation with their minds. So, Chika was the one pulling the strings from the very beginning. Kakari was another employee, and their arranged marriage was just a way to get her out of her father's protection so they could take her away when Kakari had her out of Konoha. They must have planned to experiment on her, trying to find a new bloodline. Hinata could feel Naruto's anger rising by the second. He was ready to rush at the Hyuga compound and shred that woman to pieces. But fortunately, Hinata restrained him, pleading him and reassuring him that when the time was right, Chika would pay. He nodded and let it slide. He loved when she did that, take away all his anger and frustration just with a few words and her gentle touch. Yoshi stood up. I'll be going now. Thank you, Naruto, for forgiving me. Thank you both. I won't interfere with you again. Neither will anyone else, I can promise you that, she said with an evil grin. Naruto stared at her questioningly. What do you mean? He asked curiously. She smirked. Yamanaka Ino, she stated, and both teens stared wide-eyed. She's my cousin, she added, and both of them nodded, Naruto grinning while Hinata smiled. They caught the idea. If Ino knew about it, the whole village also would in a matter of one day. Nah, too much. Should I inform her now? She asked slyly, and they both nodded. Also tell her about Kyuubi's death. We need the village to know about this, he added. She jumped around happily and rushed out of the alley and towards the village, happy to gossip probably. Both teens smiled to each other. They had another surprise for the village, but that was after they dealt with her clan. The teens started walking too, heading out of the alley. Naruto took a glance at the still open back door. He grinned at the sight of a confused waiter, staring at the broken bathroom door. Needless to say, dinner was forgotten. They stepped out in the street, and as if on cue, two Hyugas appeared in front of them. They both stared wide-eyed for a second at the couple, but it quickly changed in glaring, especially at Naruto. Hinata-sama, Hiyashi-sama has been worried about you. You didn't come home for over a day, so we came to find you. But what are you doing with that thing? He kind of whispered the last part while taking a glance at Naruto. Both teens heard him though, and Hinata had to really try in order to suppress the king intent she felt building up. How dared they call Naruto a thing? If he was a thing because of his powers, then she was too. That thing, she started, and both guards looked at her surprised that she heard them, has saved my life, she added, and glared at both of them. Naruto was amused that she could do that. He never thought she could, for she never had before. Nevertheless, Hinata-sama, Hiyashi-sama wants to see you. We are ordered to. He was cut off as Hinata raised her hand in motion for them to silence. I'd like you to return to the compound. I can take care of myself. I'll be there in a few minutes, she said formally, and the guards looked at each other for a second. Very well, Hinata-sama, the one at the left said and bowed. The other one followed in the gesture, and Hinata replied with a small bow of her own. Now go, she commanded, and both men stared at each other once more for a second before hastily leaving. It wasn't much of Hinata to command. So, can I walk you home? Naruto asked a rather rhetorical question. She smiled and nodded, placing her hand in his. He grinned back and they both started walking. She doubted herself for a second. Was the Hyuga compound really her home? Truth be told, she felt more at home when she was at Naruto's apartment, rather than when she was in the compound. The building was cold, the wood always polished and the walls always painted a boring white, every corridor and hallway looked the same, and the cold faces of her clan only added in the bulge. It was like a deserted compound, only occupied by cold living statues who just commanded and obeyed. Naruto's home was warmer, not only because it was small, but because it was. Naruto never had this damn cold mask, he never was cold. Instead, he was warm and always happy to help. Whenever she fell, he was there to help her stand. The few nights she spent with him in bed were the best of her life. So, where was her home? They reached the Hyuga compound in a matter of around half an hour of walking. They had taken their time, walking slowly, side by side with her having taken hold of his forearm. They of course, as always, ignored the glares from the villagers on their way here. They both smiled at a memory. Flashback 10 minutes before they reached the compound. As they walked down the street in practical silence, they smiled as they saw who was coming towards them. Down the street, heading towards their direction, was "Hey Dobe," said a smirking Sasuke. He then noticed Hinata, having taken hold of the blonde's forearm. The big idea flashed in his mind almost immediately as the picture was printed in his mind. His smirk widened. Even if he smirked, Naruto knew it was his unique grin. "Hey team," he answered in the insult with a wide grin. Hinata giggled at their reference to each other. "So, got closer haven't we?" Sasuke asked and both of them smiled. He expected them to blush and stutter something, but whatever. "Closer than you can imagine," Naruto whispered to himself so only Hinata could hear. Her smile widened. "So, where are you two going now?" Sasuke asked, rather stated so not to show question in his voice. Naruto knew better, "And why are you interested team?" he asked, his grin wide as ever. Sasuke, HMPED, and looked away. "I've got nothing to do today," he said. He didn't want to tell them that Sakura was out on a solo mission, and that she was the reason that he had nothing to do today, rather than train. But he had spent the whole morning on that. "You can come with us if you wish, Sasuke-san," Hinata said politely, and he averted his gaze from a bunch of giggling girls towards her. He HM'd, "All right. That way I can make sure the Dobe won't do anything stupid," he said, pointing a finger at Naruto while looking at Hinata. She smiled while Naruto frowned. "What does he mean by that?" he asked, and she giggled. "Anyway, we're heading towards Hinata's home team. Her father wants something," Naruto said and grinned widely. Hinata's smile faded as she looked down worriedly. Was she really going home? Naruto of course noticed the fade of her smile and started to worry. She didn't tell him anything mentally, neither could he access her thoughts. Well, he could, but they had agreed not to interfere with the privacy of each other. He remained silent, letting her keep her thoughts to herself, and grinned at Sasuke, who was just staring at them blankly. "All right team. Let's get going," he said happily, and Hinata's smile returned at the sight of his grinning face. He always had this effect on her, making her feel more secure, more strong, more. Sasuke shrugged and they started walking towards the Hyuga compound. End flashback. They were shot out of their little trance when Sasuke spoke up. "So, are you going to knock, or do the Hyugas communicate with eye contact?" he said and smirked. Hinata nodded and walked up a step to knock the door. Naruto frowned. "Oh my god. The team has a sense of humor. I thought you lost it in the toilet or something," he said and grinned widely. Sasuke just HM'd, returning to his usual, no answer giving, self. Hinata had already knocked the door, and after a few seconds, it slid open, revealing Neji. Sasuke glared at the young Hyuga genius. "Hyuga," he stated. Neji seemed to notice him just then. He turned his questioning gaze from the couple to the smirking Sasuke. "Uchiha," he stated back. "Hyuga. Uchiha. Hyuga. Uchiha. Uzumaki." Naruto got in the middle of their little glaring debate, interrupting them from the little world they had lost themselves in. The two geniuses' sweat dropped, anime style. It was then that they realized that Hinata was already inside the building. Naruto, of course, was the first one to rush at her side. He fell in step with her as they walked down the hallway. She turned to look at him and smiled sweetly. He smiled widely back. In the meantime, Neji and Sasuke were following behind, taking glares at each other. Sasuke and Neji had been some kind of rivals lately. Sasuke would usually spar with the Hyuga genius, and the match could come as a tie, or one of them would win with the other one winning the next day. Naruto didn't have a problem with Neji taking Sasuke on as a rival. He would mind for that later. As they walked down the rather empty hallways, Hinata couldn't help but shiver a little. It seemed too cold and abandoned. It was clean, of course, not a speck of dust anywhere. The wood of the floor was polished as always, and the walls were painted the usual, blank, white color. She sighed. Did she really call this home? Naruto's apartment was so different. Neji had told him that Hiashi expected her at the council meeting chamber. Why couldn't he just call her in his office? What was going on? Sasuke normally wouldn't be allowed in the compound, for he was an Uchiha. But considering the fact that he was Hinata's friend and that the Uchiha clan wasn't even a threat, they let him in the chamber. The only reason he was Hinata's friend though was that he was Naruto's brother. At least they considered themselves like this, though Sasuke wouldn't openly admit it. They all sat down in front of the council and Hiashi. Naruto at Hinata's left, who had Neji at her other side. Sasuke sat next to Naruto. Hyuga Hinata, may I ask, why did you bring him here? An elderly woman asked. If Hinata and the other three didn't know better, they could think she referred to Sasuke. Too bad it wasn't like this at all. I considered that he is required in this meeting, she stated blankly, which surprised most in the room, except the three next to her, that is. She didn't stutter in the tiniest, and her voice was blank. Was this Hinata? An elder was ready to protest, but Hiashi raised his hand in motion for everyone to silence. Enough, he said and stared at the teens blankly. Hinata, we would just like to know where have you been since yesterday when you left. After we are satisfied, you and your friends may leave, he said, question not evident in his cold tone and voice. Hinata stared back, her face equally blank. It seemed that she was out for at least a day. What was she doing before it? She didn't care. What mattered was the present. Satisfied. When have you been satisfied? She said angrily in her mind, and Naruto heard it. She mustn't have realized she said it out loud in her mind, for she kept staring blankly at the elders and her father. He knew what she meant. All the time, not her father nor the elders would be satisfied with her. Kyuubi had stored the memories of their new past in their minds, so they had unlocked them to see what was different. Naruto's life was pretty much the same, except the fangirl thing. Hinata's too. Her clan despised her as a weakling. Her father thought of her as nothing. Her sister, Hanabi, was considered the righteous heir. Well, she didn't care. She knew she wasn't weak, and now, she cared not to show it to her father. Her list of person that their opinion mattered was now even smaller. Not her clan, neither her father were there. She started explaining. She remembered what had happened in her alternated past. First, she had gone out with Naruto at the Hokage Tower. Afterwards, they had walks around town. When they met with Sakura, they went out for dinner. At this point, some of the elders seemed to sneer or glare at Naruto. They didn't seem to like the idea of their heiress dinning with him. Well, that's good. It would be even sweeter at the end. When the dinner was done, they had left and sat at a park. They were attacked by a group of ninjas, and after her friends were gone to look for still hiding enemies, someone grabbed her from behind and took her away at an abandoned building. It was Kakarei. Many gasps were heard, especially from the council. Hiashi stared emotionlessly as ever. And why do you presume that he kped you? He could very well try to take you away from danger and hide you somewhere where no more capers could find you. An elderly woman said, and Hinata looked up at her. Kakarei took me to an abandoned house. There was one more man there, a Hyuga, she said. They all gasped. Hinata and Naruto were a little startled. Didn't they know about the traitor? Weren't they told? Weren't you told about this, honorable elders? She asked softly. She didn't use the cold tone her clan usually did. She hated it. The elders shook their heads and glared at Hiashi. Hiashi pretended as nothing had happened. Jika-sama has taken care of him. He was a personal assistant of hers, so I let her decide his punishment. If she didn't want it to be known, I wouldn't be the one to spread the news, he stated blankly. The elders nodded. Surprisingly enough, Jika wasn't in the room. Hinata sighed as she prepared to continue her speech. Now was the good part. Kakarei's K attempt was in vain. Naruto-kun came in time to confront him before I could even leave his shoulder, she said, and took a glance at Naruto. A smile crept on her face for a second before she turned to look emotionlessly back at the elders. They didn't deserve her emotions. Hinata also remembered something intriguing. Many of the men she fought today were Hyugas. Were they traitors as well? Neither the council, nor her father seemed to know about this attempt today. It must have been Jika's work, along with other Hyugas who wanted to be disposed of the weak heir. She shook these thoughts off as the matter at hand was more important. Naruto-kun used his Kyuubi powers to defeat the traitor easily, while I hunted down Kakarei, she said, and all eyes went wide. All. Except Sasuke's and Neji's, of course. Neji knew about Kyuubi for a long time now. His Byakugan had seen the red chakra, so it was more than logical that the Hyuga genius could soon figure it out. Naruto flashed his red eyes at the council with a grin on his face. Even Hiashi was staring wide-eyed. You One of the elders started as he shook himself out of the surprise. You will leave this establishment now, he stated, and several Hyuga guards appeared out of nowhere. They all moved towards the boy, who was now smirking. One of them reached out his hand to grab Naruto by the shoulder, but the boy just tilted his head, allowing the man to look at his blood-red eyes. Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, he said in his voice, as a slight cloak of the fox started rising, covering his body in a fox-shaped red glitter. All the men had shivers running down their spines at the sound of the voice. It was demonic. Hinata, you are hereby forbid of even getting close to this thing again. You can clearly see what he can do. He was cut off by Hinata's cold glare. No one knew the heiress could take such a look. I know what he is, I know what he can do, and I know I couldn't ask for more, she said and hugged Naruto, who hugged her back, glaring at the stunned council. One of the guards approached again. Hinata-sama. Stay away from him. It's dangerous too. He was cut off by a glare from both teens. Stay close to the fox. Stay close to the only one who doesn't think I'm weak. Stay close to the man I love, she said and hugged Naruto tightly, who returned the gesture with a smile. Nevertheless, he is a danger. It is proven that, one of the elders started, but Hinata could take it no more. She flashed them two seemingly empty pools of blood red. They all stared at her wide-eyed. If he is a danger, then I am too. At least for you, she said in her own voice. The council couldn't believe what they saw. You monster. You turned the heiress into a demon. He wants to destroy our clan. An old elder shouted and both teens glared angrily at him, Hinata's own cloak of the fox rising. It was glittering red light in the shape of a fox that surrounded her. Her cloak began mixing with Naruto's. I don't give a damn about your clan. You all old hags think Hinata is weak while she's the strongest amongst you fools. Not only in power now, but in spirit as well. She has always been, Naruto said, sending glares against the council, who all felt shivers running down their spines once more. She looked up at him and gave him a peck on the cheek, making him smile. She smiled back. Then from now on, Hinata is no longer a Hyuga. She will not stain the name of our clan by associating with this thing, much more being the same. An elder said. Hinata glared at him. Elder, I had no intention of staying in this clan from the moment I stepped in this compound today. As for staining the name of the clan, this is nearly impossible. There isn't a clean spot left for me to stain anyway, she said and kept hugging Naruto. The council glared at her. How dare you little. Before the elder could continue, Naruto was right in front of him, a Rasengan in hand. Not wise to insult Hinata-chan now, is it? He asked sarcastically. The elder gulped. The last one to do so was Kakari. You all remember what happened to him, right? Boy, didn't he scream when his clothes were destroyed? Naruto added and laughed evilly, laughed in his voice mode. Hinata joined in with a giggle of hers, sounding demonic from the mixture of her voice. Yeah, we had fun with him. Have you got any other fool to marry Hinata off, Hyuga-sama? We would love to pay him a visit. Sasuke spoke for the first time, and all eyes fell on him. You were part of this? The old man in front of Naruto asked coldly, half in disbelief. Sasuke nodded. I finished him with my Mangekyo. The Hokage approved of that, he said, and all eyes went wide once more. Neji, in the meantime, was just sitting back and enjoying the show. He was a little startled at first when Hinata unlocked her powers, but he quickly calmed down, seeing no real change instead of her red chakra. If he knew Naruto well enough, this chakra wasn't a problem. Hinata, what do you mean that the clan is defiled? What makes you think so? Hiashi spoke and everyone seemed a little surprised that he talked. Hinata didn't allow her red gaze to falter. Hinata sighed as Naruto returned at her side. She explained the whole situation. Chika's betrayal, the reasons behind it, the Hyugas who followed her cause. The elders seemed to agree. Anyhow, Chika will be confronted. But that doesn't change the fact that you, Hinata, will no longer be a Hyuga. Such disgrace is not acceptable in our clan, an elder said coldly, but Hinata only shrugged. I could care less for the clan that never accepted me from the beginning. I'm sure that Hanabi will satisfy you more. She has your attitude after all, father, she said, taking a glance at her father who just stared at her, emotion quite not evident in his face. And how would you be called now, Hinata? He asked curiously. Hinata was a little taken aback that he had put emotion in his voice. Uzumaki. I'd like to be called Uzumaki, she said, her voice back to normal as she looked back at Naruto with a smile. He smiled back though a small blush was tinting his face. Very well. From now on, Hyuga Hinata will be known as Uzumaki Hinata. The properties of the clan heir are hereby passed to Hyuga Hanabi. Uzumaki Hinata will receive the caged bird seal and Hiashi was cut off as Hinata giggled and Naruto laughed. Hiashi raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, Hiashi-sama, but Hinata-chan will not take such a thing, Naruto said, his eyes and voice back to normal, along with Hinata's. What do you mean, Uzumaki-san? Hiashi asked coldly. Naruto laughed again. The caged bird seal binds the secrets of the Byakugan, am I wrong? Naruto asked and Hiashi nodded. The teen now grinned widely. Well, too bad Hinata doesn't have the Byakugan, he said cheerfully and Hinata nodded while smiling. Everyone, along with Neji and Sasuke stared wide-eyed. Oh. What are you talking about? Hiashi asked finally. Hinata flashed her red eyes again and activated her Akakugan. Everyone gasped. It was like the Byakugan, bulked veins around her eyes and pupils appearing in the middle of the otherwise empty pools. The Akakugan is a trait of the Uzumaki clan from now on. The mixed power of Kyubi no Kitsune with the Byakugan has given me a far more enhanced sight. This is not the Byakugan, thus I cannot be sealed. That is all, Hinata stated and bowed slightly. When she rose, a smile was crept on her face. The council sighed and nodded. What she said was true. Akakugan was different than Byakugan, even if it was just an enhanced version, but nevertheless, it was now the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan and the Hyugas had no right to place the seal on her. Leave the premises now, you demons, and never step here again. One of the elders snapped angrily and both teens glared at him with red eyes. Gladly, they said in unison and hugged each other. They both headed outside, Sasuke coming along. They kept their red eyes flashed though, which kind of made Sasuke want to flash his Sharingan. Show-offs, he thought as he walked behind them. As they walked towards the gates to exit the compound, they heard the guard of the front door telling Jika that the council and Hiashi wanted to talk to her. All three teens grinned at the idea of Jika getting TD. As if on cue, she appeared in front of them and gasped. What is this monster doing here? She snapped angrily, pointing a finger at Naruto. Probably, she was so startled by his red gaze that she didn't notice Hinata's own red eyes. He's my boyfriend, Jika-sama, a tint of poison was painting the last word, and Jika quickly averted her gaze from the grinning boy to the blood-red-eyed Hinata. What has he done to you? She asked in disbelief. Hinata smiled. Saved me, she said, and all three teens walked out of the compound. Sasuke was smirking. Seeing Hyugas like this was a sight to behold. So, Hinata-chan, aren't you sad that your family kicked you out? Naruto asked worriedly. They had both turned their eyes back to normal. Sasuke had left for the Hokage Tower, excusing that he wanted to look for a mission. They both knew though, that today Sakura was coming back, and she should be there by now. Hinata turned to look at him and smiled widely. No, she chirped. I can finally do whatever I want. I can have my own apartment, paint it whatever color I want, even have cats. She said and added a skip in her step. Or I'm allergic to cats. Naruto whined and she giggled. No you're not, she said and gave him a peck on the cheek, making him smile. They kept walking down the street towards his apartment. Neji had offered to bring Hinata's belongings to Naruto's apartment. Truth is, he was more than amused and very proud that his cousin had finally stood her ground. Well, Hinata didn't have many things anyway. Naruto looked down at the ground. She said she wanted to have her own apartment, maybe she didn't want to stay with him. He stole a glance at her and she was still skipping, looking up at the sky. He looked back at the ground as they kept walking. Naruto-kun, he was shot out of his trance at the sound of her soft voice. Yep, that was Hinata for sure. He looked up at her and managed a smile. Would you mind if I stay with you? She asked softly once more and his smile melted into a wide grin. Of course you can stay with me, he said and hugged her tightly. She returned the gesture though with less force. Yep, this was Naruto for sure. They reached the door to his apartment. Naruto looked in his pocket for a set of keys, and luckily found it. Opening the door, the apartment was like always. Now she knew, now that she saw this little apartment again, now that Naruto stood next to her and now that she could see the warm paint of the walls, the slight smell of ramen mixed with Naruto's, the warmth it radiated, she was home. He grinned and they both walked in. Closing the door behind him, he turned around and quickly took Hinata in a deep kiss. He had missed kissing her even if he hadn't only for around a day. When they broke apart after a few minutes, they realized that the sun had nearly faded behind the sky and weak light was falling into the room from the small windows. Well, I guess we will tell the others tomorrow, Ne. He said and smiled at her, who nodded, giving him her own unique smile. He kissed her again. The barely noticeable morning sunlight crept inside the bedroom from the windows. His eyelids slowly opened, trying to adjust his sight. He noticed something warm next to him, very warm. Tilting his head slightly to the side, he saw the most beautiful thing in the world. Hinata was lying right next to him, this time her head in the crook of his a hand resting on his chest while a leg was lying over his own. He smiled remembering last night. How could she be perfect for him in every way? The covers hid most of their nude boss, and he couldn't help but admire the glitter the morning sunlight gave to her pale skin. Ofn, got the idea. Good, for I want the rating to stay K smiley face. He slowly grabbed the sheets, bringing them up to cover more of them, taking glances at her perfect curves while doing so. Covering them to the her for if it was over his, she would be completely under the covers, and he didn't want to miss the sight of her pretty face now did he? He snuggled closer and embraced her in his arms, feeling her slowly do the same to him in her sleep. He smiled as he rested his head on the top of her head. He smiled, her warmth was so soothing, her smell was so relaxing, her body was so soft, he was afraid that if he embraced her harder, she would break like a fragile doll. His thoughts trailed off as he fell back in the peaceful slumber, his life not having any more worries now, it would only go for the better, he would make sure of it. FINITO. Epilogue following. Soulmate, by your side. Epilogue. 5 months after Hinata was kicked out of her clan. Naruto Yubaka. Hurry up, yelled a frustrated Sakura at an approaching Naruto. Sorry Sakura-chan. I got lost in the road of life and, he knew the lame, Kakashi, excuse didn't work, for Sakura glared at him angrily. No time for excuses Yubaka. Go in there now, she snapped angrily and he nodded. Standing straight and patting any dirt from his kimono, he opened the doors of the church. Ofn I don't know if they use churches in Japan, so as a Christian, I'm placing my own religion's building. Entering, he quickly headed down the small hallway towards the main chamber where the ceremony would take place. Opening the door, he found Shikamaru, Sasuke and Kiba waiting. Dobe, you're late, Sasuke stated and Shikamaru only nodded in agreement. Well, not entirely. The ceremony will start in a few minutes. Kiba said happily and Naruto nodded. He was glad he wasn't late, in his own marriage. Walking up the aisle, he stood before the former Hokage, Tsunade of the Sannin, who as the former Hokage and as his mother would marry him to the chosen woman. Ofn I'm not really familiar with marriages. After a few more minutes, the ceremony started. Naruto turned around to the doors behind him, waiting for the woman of his life to step through the door and into the chamber. His heart raced as the door slowly slid open. In the chamber entered. Hyuga Hiashi was the first to enter the chamber. After a second or two, being satisfied at the pained and shocked look on Naruto's face, he motioned the one who followed him to enter the room. Slowly, a young woman entered, dressed in a lavender bride dress, her long ink blue hair falling freely down her back, her hands holding a banquet with lavender and white-colored flowers, her cheeks painted with a slight red from the makeup, her smile heart-melting, her lavender eyes emitting everything he wanted. His heart skipped a beat. He thought she wouldn't get more beautiful, yet she kept surprising him. She slowly walked towards him, her hand holding her father's forearm. Hiashi delivered her to the aisle and let her stand beside Naruto, a smile painting his face. Hiashi was more than proud of his daughter. She had become the strong person she always wanted to be, and all this thanks to the blonde man next to her. Ofn remember, he didn't protest about their relationship at the council meeting. XD. Hinata would have her former family's name in order to properly get through the marriage. Hiashi also gladly agreed in this, while some from the council protested. A glare from him was enough to silence them. They couldn't easily forget what he had done to Jika after she confessed her crimes. Nope, no one wanted to ever think about it again. Auto FNL leave your own imagination work on this one smiley face. Hinata stood beside Naruto as the ceremony officially began. She took a glance at him, and blushed slightly, though it wasn't noticeable under the makeup. He was more than handsome in his formal kimono, a white one, sparkling golden flames at the bottom with the mark of the Uzumaki clan at his back. The head of a fox lying within a delicate circle, 9 tails seeming to swirl around it. They both took a glance at the audience behind them as Tsunade kept on with the boring part of the story. Ino and Sakura were sitting next to each other, Sakura having Sasuke next to her, an arm of his over her shoulder while Ino had Shikamaru's hand over her own shoulder. Both girls were allowing a few tears of happiness to fall down their faces. Shikamaru and Sasuke just smiled at them. Chuji was surprisingly not eating. Instead, he sat at his sit, having a girl of around his size next to him. He was smiling along with his fiancée. Neji was sitting between Hiashi and Tenten, all three smiling at the couple. Guy and Lee were hugging each other and cried waterfalls. Kiba and Shino just nodded in approval when Hinata's glance fell on them. She smiled back. Shino didn't wear his usual coat, instead he had a black long-sleeve t-shirt, wearing matching pants with his trademark sunglasses. Kiba also wore something more formal for the day. They were both smiling widely. Your vows, please, Tsunade said formally. Both of them nodded. Naruto took out a delicate golden ring, a single silver line running in the middle. He gently took Hinata's hand in his. Hyuga Hinata, you were, and the light in the darkness of my life. I don't know what I did to deserve you. I would gladly spend the rest of my life with you, and I would before I see you harmed, he said and gently slid the ring in her ring finger. He looked at her and smiled, and she smiled back. She took another ring that looked exactly like the one he had given her, and lifted his hand with her own smaller one. Uzumaki Naruto, you have always been the inspiration of my life. I wish I would approach you sooner, be there for you sooner. Everyone made me believe I was nothing, yet you came and told me I was something, and I believed you, and because I did so, now I can see it was and it is true. Thank you, she said and smiled warmly. He returned it with his own unique, reserved for her sincere smile. She slowly slid the ring in his own ring finger. They both turned to look at Tsunade who smiled at both of them. So, Uzumaki Naruto, do you accept this woman to be your wife, in good and bad, in health and sickness, till death forces you apart? She said formally. Naruto smiled again. He knew that even the last one couldn't do the trick, at least not completely. I do, he answered, but he wished he could say something more, though no words could exactly describe his need to be next to her, not wanting to miss a thing. Tsunade turned at a smiling Hinata. And you, Hyuga Hinata, do you accept this man to be your husband, in good and bad, in health and sickness, till death forces you apart? She asked formally once more. Hinata's smile never faltered, and everyone could swear that such a smile had never painted her face in the years they knew her. I do. Tsunade gave both of them a last smile before announcing the end of the ceremony. Very well. Since there are no objections, she glared angrily at a Hyuga elder who was about to protest, but he knew better than to defile Tsunade's inhuman strength. I hereby pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss the bride, she said, the last sentence pointed to Naruto of course. He smiled and averted his gaze from his mother to the woman of his dreams. She was smiling back. He leaned closer, and so did she. I want to always be there, Hina-chan, he said mentally, his face now a few inches away. I want to always be there too, Naruto-kun, she answered, and now their lips were merely an inch away. Then they whispered in each other's mouth something they should have done long ago. Something that now, even death could not stop. He would always be there, she would always be there, their lips met in the best kiss they ever had. By your side, X. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.